And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/Cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 tailgate, where, listen, we promise you right here, we are going to be having a special guest join us. Thomas jumped in the tailgate more than an hour before we got started and said, more of us in the chat today with Norlander joining. Isaac, our good friend, points out, man, the SEC is 500 in conference play since January 4th. It really makes you wonder if they are, in fact, just as strong as they act like. So that's right. Let's bring them on in to the show. Happy to have with us from the Eye on College Basketball podcast, Matt Norlander, a crossover event, decades in the making. And Matt, we will, obviously, for those of you listening, those of you watching, we're going to be getting into the college football playoff possible expansion, which, hey.
Oh, God, don't even get me started.
I was going to say.
Lead us into another 96-team tournament and the wars that we got here. We will be talking about the assistant coaching carousel a little bit later on. But Matt, we had to get you on because we were having all these discussions like, man, what's been going on in college basketball? And I know, like, Bud needs some education. And so, like, I guess, Bud, like, where do you want to start with this? What's our first question for our college basketball expert in this this crossover event?
Matt, so first of all, welcome back to the show.
Welcome back. Have I ever even been on?
Wait, you?
Have we ever even spoken? We haven't. Look at your automatic default mode. Before we get rolling here, I need to make sure that I understand the parameters of what's going on. Okay. So you really have almost no knowledge of what's happening in college basketball this season?
I watched about 10 minutes of the Alabama-Auburn game the other night because my buddy had a huge bet on it. He's like, what do you think? I was like, bro, flip a coin. Like, I don't know any players' names. I don't know who's good. Apparently, like, Alabama and Auburn are good in basketball. So that was interesting.
Bud's an NBA snob. He's one of those guys who doesn't want to watch college.
I'll watch college basketball for the tournament, and I'll watch NBA during the playoffs. But, like,
I got a couple things to get to here. What's your stance on premarital sex?
Pro.
Okay, more of us. Okay, let's hear that. Not even, and for the audience, we're serious. I just hopped on. I was able to get off a call. Like, Chip sent me the link, and I was like, damn it, I'm on the call with an important source right now. Give me time. I got it done. How many college basketball players active right now can you name?
Cooper Flagg.
That's it.
Yeah.
You saw Auburn play Alabama on Saturday, and you can't name the National Player of the Year frontrunner that was playing in that game.
It was on mute. I was at a restaurant. I watched like 10 minutes. I don't know their names.
Cooper Flagg is the only player you can name.
Cool.
He doesn't even know Ben Middlebrooks.
Yeah, Danny's nephew.
Okay, no, Danny's nephew. Yeah.
Danny's nephew, Middlebrooks.
What school does he play for, Bud?
NC State.
There we go. Okay, we got something going here. All right. Well, this is wonderful. Anyone watching live, we appreciate it. I love a live chat that's humming on a Monday morning. Great stuff. If you are not already following and subscribed to the Eye on College Basketball podcast, I co-host it with Gary Parrish. We go at least 4 times a week, once on CBS Sports Network and YouTube and the feed and all that good stuff here. All right, lay it on me. Any question we'll do. I will take anything you got. Let's get into this because I can't wait. I'm psyched. Let's go shoot some birds.
All right, so a couple teams. I'm definitely not going to root for Florida State in the tournament because they're not going to make the tournament, I assume. I need to pick a team to root for. I need to know, like, what makes this year special or different. Like, what are the storylines we got to be following? If I'm at a party and people are like, that's the sports guy, I got to, like be able to talk about this a little bit, especially if it's somebody I don't want to have, like, an actual conversation with. Just be able to rattle out a couple things would be greatly helpful this time of year. Like, what should I be following if I'm just jumping into it right now?
Okay. The number one story in the sport right now is the fact that the SEC is way better in basketball than it is in football. The SEC is in the midst of what could be the best single season for a conference in the history of men's Division I basketball. It could set the record for most teams to go into the tournament. That record is 11 by the Big East in 2011. The SEC is now a 16-school league. It could conceivably get 12 teams in. There's some teams near the bottom half that aren't holding up their end of the bargain as of late. We'll see if that shifts around a little bit or not. But the SEC's dominant, and then attached to that is Auburn being the best team in the country. And potentially, I wrote about it on CBS Sport at CBSSports.com and on the CBS Sports app over the weekend. Auburn might be in the midst. They got to win the title and all this stuff, so that's not going to be easy. But if Auburn keeps this up, it's going to have one of the, I don't know, 5 or 7 best single season runs that we've seen in the sport over the past quarter century. Like, it's tracking toward that. We'll see if we can get there. So that's a big story. Number 2 is probably the National Player of the Year race, which is between Auburn's Janai Broome and Cooper Flagg of Duke right now. It's pretty close. Broome, in my estimation, has the lead. I wrote about it a couple weeks ago for .com. We are having what could be one of the 3 or 4 best Player of the Year races that we've seen over the past 40 years in college basketball. Like, how many Heisman races were effectively wire to wire, this guy, that guy, on maybe the 2 best teams in college football? How many times in the past 4 decades has the Heisman been gifted a race that's been that good? Because that's kind of what we got right now in college hoops.
I've got an answer. Oh, I think Vince Young, Reggie Bush.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
That one was like it was the 2 players that were playing for national championship contenders. They were each superstars. And then we get that nice little twist of, like, especially if one of Broome or Flagg wins National Player of the Year, but then the other one wins the national championship, then you kind of get that back and forth that we got in the 05 season as well.
All right.
Good note there. And I would say even that one was even better than what this one is. But this one, you got a player at Duke who's a freshman. He's a phenom. He's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. And then you've got a 5th-year player who started his career at Morehead State, playing for a program that's never had a National Player of the Year or anything close to it. Super compelling. Freshman class is amazing this season. Best group of for casuals, and Bud is not even a casual, I don't even think. They talk about like the one and done and how it can be good or bad for college basketball. The freshman class has not been this good in a long time. That's a pretty big storyline. UConn was going for the 3-peat. It's not good this season. It's not terrible, but right now UConn's a projected 9 seed. It just lost on the road to a Seton Hall team who I would say,
it's a shame, Tom.
I was going to ask.
I was so upset. It made me feel terrible that Bobby Hurley, the greatest effing coach, Mr. 2 rings himself,
Bobby's at Arizona
can't draw
State.
up a sideline inbound.
Bobby's at Arizona State.
I'm sorry, Danny Hurley.
Yeah, what? You mix up Danny Hurley and Bobby Hurley. You know what? Danny's going to call you?
I think that's a squirrel.
You're a squirrel.
Yeah. To come right off of 2 rings Baldy into losing.
Can't draw an inbounds play.
2 rings Baldy and then losing on the road at Seton Hall.
At his alma mater, who he also lost to last year.
Mm-hmm. So maybe he threw it.
To make Bud understand, what is the 2024 college football comparison in terms of Seton? Like, Seton Hall's one of the 2 worst power conference teams in all of
Florida State. Yeah.
It's not Florida State.
This year it was.
It's Northern Illinois beating Notre Dame.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, but Northern Illinois is not a power conference team.
It would be if Florida State had beaten Clemson. Remember when there was
Purdue had beaten Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Purdue. There you go.
Notre Dame. Yeah.
Something like that. So UConn being up and down constantly. Kansas was the preseason. Who was the preseason number 1 last season in college football?
Georgia or Ohio State. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Ohio State was certainly very, very good. Georgia was pretty good. Kansas was the preseason number 1, and it's now, like a 5 seed overall. It's Kansas is a little bit of a letdown. So UConn and Kansas were 2 of the top 3 preseason teams, and right now neither of them is going to be. The poll will refresh here in less than 2 hours. Neither of them will be in this week's top 25. What else? Fire away. Give it to me.
Okay, so I do actually have a real list. We'll definitely do 15 or 20 minutes on this. Auburn is maybe like they're in the running for one of the 5 or 7 best teams ever, potentially, or best runs ever. What actually makes them good other than the Player of the Year, potentially?
Good question. They are fairly deep. They are extremely efficient. They're well coached, obviously. Bruce Pearl and his staff does a really, really good job. They're the best offense in the country. So they score more points per possession than anyone in the nation, despite the fact that they're not an A+ or an A 3-point shooting team and not an A+ or an A 2-point shooting team, but they're really, really good at both, and they're really good at rebounding, and they don't turn the ball over. They're just well balanced. They're veteran laden. And they've got a little flash. They've got a freshman named Tahad Pettiford, had a couple big plays over the weekend, and he's a little bit of a dazzler. So you combine that with the overload of wings. They've got 2 bigs. They've got this other guy named Dylan Cardwell, who's a 5th-year senior, who's he's a beast, and he trades off with Janai Broome, who's a 6'10" power forward. And they just have a little bit of it all, and they don't generally speaking, they don't beat themselves. They have gotten behind in a couple of games this season against Iowa State and Maui. I was out there in Hawaii and watched that, and they came back from a 17-point deficit to beat Iowa State, an Iowa State team that's top 10 in the country. And then they randomly last weekend, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, they got beat at home against a Florida team that is incredibly good as well. The SEC is just downright stacked there. But for the most part, they truly do not beat themselves.
They're college good. Like,
Wait,
they're not.
Chad is saying they're old. Like, when you said veteran, is that code for, like, how old are we talking?
They are among the oldest teams in the sport. They're not the oldest, but like Janai Broom's in his final year of eligibility. Chad Baker Mazar's in his final year of eligibility.
These COVID kids, like COVID bonus years?
Yeah, like
Dylan Cardwell.
If you look at their team, like Pettiford's really the only freshman that actually has an impact, correct?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Pettiford's the only freshman. Everyone else, Broom's a senior. Baker Mazar is a senior. Denver Jones, Miles Kelly, Cheney Johnson, Dylan Cardwell. These are all seniors. So there's also that as well. Yeah, they're legit, man. There has never been a team, or at least not in recent memory, that has been, from a resume perspective, this far out ahead of every single other team in the country. Like they have 14 quad one wins. The next closest teams are all in the SEC, and they have 8. It's a joke how much better their resume is than everyone else.
I did hear from several of my neighbors that Florida beat Auburn recently, and they think Florida is like really, really good. Are they right? Am I going to have to hear about this as a Noel like quite a bit, or what do we think on Gators?
Gators are really good. Gators are a projected 1 seed. Todd Golden's team is 22-3. Its only losses came in a 106-100 loss at a Kentucky team that's injury riddled, but has been a lot of fun to watch this season and beating some good teams. That was probably the best game of the season so far. Kentucky 106, Florida 100 in regulation, by the way, 206 total points in 40 minutes. Florida lost by 1 at home to a Missouri team that's among the best bounce back teams in the country. And then Florida randomly had its worst shooting performance in school history in a loss against the Tennessee team that's the best 2 seed right now, and that happened on the 1st of February. But yeah, Gators are for real. They've got a great 3-guard attack. Walter Clayton Jr. is a first-team All-American probably at this point. Like, he's been a top 5 player in the country. You got Elijah Martin, who played for FAU. They made the Final Four a couple of years ago. Will Richards, another good guard there. They just got a big who came back after missing almost a year after breaking his leg. So yeah, no, Florida's good. Florida's good enough to win the national title. Whether they do or not, we'll see. But they are among the 3 or 4 best teams in the sport.
All right, projected 1 through 3 seed, who we think is kind of bullshit and probably will get bounced early in the tournament because what they do doesn't really work in the tournament. Just for my own bracket purposes.
I love it. We're just letting the curses
fraudulent, baby.
Give me a fraud.
Fraud.
Projected 1 through 3 seed. Okay, so I'm gonna list off the. Here's what I'll do. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna list off the teams that were in that designation over the weekend when the bracket reveal aired on CBS. So here were the 1 through 3 seeds as it stood Saturday morning before we got results. Your 1s were Auburn, Bama, Duke, and Florida. Your 2s were Tennessee, A&M, Purdue, and Houston, and your 3s were Iowa State, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Arizona. Go back to
the beginning of the season. Bury them again. They've lost their way. Those clones can't do it. Bury them again. Dig yourself in the hole, Norlander.
What Chip is alluding to is I think they call this pulling a Kanell, where you pick a couple teams to be terrible and then you're brutally wrong. I did that with Auburn and Iowa State. Unfortunately, I was way wrong. It was not good whatsoever. So that's what Chip is alluding to there. I would say it's A&M for this reason. Now, Buzz Williams, first of all, he's dapper as can be, going 3-piece these days on the sideline, sweating all the way through it. The mentality that I'm going to dress to the nines and then proceed to just soak my suit is something on a sicko level that I can never fully understand, but will entirely respect the whole way through. Here's why I'm giving you Texas A&M, though. Projected 2 seed, really good resume right now. A&M ranks 307th in 3-point accuracy, 256 in 2-point accuracy, 294 from the foul line. Okay. The reason why they're this good, despite not being a team that can shoot, is they are the best by far at crashing the offensive glass. No team rebounds at a higher rate on the offensive end than Texas A&M. So they thrive on second and third chance opportunities. you get the wrong team, the wrong matchup, someone that's really going to want to punch you in the chin. That's the one that can get you picked off there. But the resume is undeniable. But you asked the question, I give you an answer. Your biggest fraud alert, Texas A&M.
Yeah, and I'll say that when we play a game talking about college football teams and college football games, one of the things we will say in our big game breakdown is there is a number that we do not trust the other team to be able to reach. Like there is a certain potential that if you play a game on I hate to pull the easy one, but just to make it as broad as possible, if you play a game on Iowa's terms, Iowa can beat you in that game that's on their terms. However, there is an offensive ceiling that if the opponent is able to hit, in the basketball sense, if you come out and you start just stroking it from downtown, now all of a sudden that absolute hell that Texas A&M puts you in with their physicality and their intensity, it's not going to work as well. So to meet a seed line expectation, I like that. I like that shout for Texas A&M.
Okay.
I agree with.
What else you got?
How many teams?
Can I share a fraud that's not top 3?
Sure, go ahead.
When they be a 4 seed, narrative-wise, I don't enjoy it. It hurts me a little bit, but St. John's. Big East is kind of down. What's St. John's best win so far this year?
Well, St. John's
they haven't beaten a top 25 team in Ken
coached by one of the best coaches in the history of the sport.
So here's my pitch on St. John's.
With 4 losses by a combined 7 points. Now, offensively, they're not great. If you want to know what St. John's best win is this season,
Marquette.
Home against Marquette is probably your answer.
Yeah, exactly.
If St. John's wins its Sweet 16 game, they're going to the Final Four. My argument is that if any coach in college basketball, I'm going to take Rick Pitino in all the game 2s. That like Rick Pitino's not losing.
2-day turnaround.
Yeah. Rick
Pitino's still coaching?
Yeah.
Stop it, man.
Yes.
You cannot convince me that you exist in this world and don't realize that Rick Pitino is coaching St. John's. Like there's enough out there that you would have picked up on that.
I don't really watch Sports Center. Like on Twitter, I just use lists. So it's just very heavily. I'm terminally online for college football, but not everything else.
Which also means it's probably you're not getting the St. John's media. You're not getting the UConn media.
I follow zero St. John's accounts.
Yeah, so no Big East media.
Yeah, but not even anyone in the college football world has quote tweeted a random thing where Pitino's been ridiculous on the mic. Like that doesn't cross over into your universe.
Not really. This is why, this is kind of why, we got to get Norland Rock. But it's Philly.
No, but listen, you asked this, and this is more of a big picture thing because I like the way you phrased it. Matt, Bud was saying the SEC is invested in basketball. They've made themselves the best league potentially ever. And what Bud was asking, he said, well, is it worth it? Do you think that there are decisions being made at Southeastern Conference universities where the investment in being awesome at basketball, collecting transfer portal talent, hiring the best coaches is actually having a negative impact on the football side?
No.
University
administrators. That's some excuse. I'm not saying that Bud's saying it, but if anyone that were to use that's some excuse making bullshit. SEC is still prioritizing football, not even close. It just so happens to have a lot of really, really good coaches. The NIL budgets went up, and now that's corresponding to a season that has been the SEC won 89% of its games outside of league play, which is outrageous. There had never been a league with at least 12 teams in it that won a high percentage of its non-conference games in the SEC this season. So no, the two things, in my opinion, they do not touch each other. The SEC and football and all the resources and attention, everything that goes into that, it operates independently of what SEC basketball is capable of doing and how it's funded. Doesn't mean that the SEC in basketball wasn't motivated by how good it was in football. That was a very big thing in Mike's live. We're coming up on a decade now since the SEC had this bad run where it was only getting 3 teams in the tournament 3 out of 4 years or whatever, and they've made big significant changes in a lot of ways, and it's changed the deal altogether. But I don't think if the SEC is taking a little bit of a downward dip a little bit relative to its expectations, it's not that it's because hoops is siphoning off any kind of money or energy.
Did the SEC not used to buy players in basketball like they always did in football? Like why are they all of a sudden? I mean, clearly, they're able to pay for it now.
They did. I mean,
they weren't interested in buying players.
Not to the level that it's happening now, but it was obviously, yes, still very much happening. Like the SEC was still known for that, very much.
Remember when Ben Simmons played at LSU for some reason?
Well, we don't need to go down the total deep dive, but he actually did have an actual connection to a member of the coaching staff there that led him there. Not to say that there wasn't other stuff going on, but there was a true connection with a guy named David Patrick, and that's why he played at LSU.
How many teams can, if they get hot at the right time and they play, let's take the sliders video game style and put them all the way to the right. If they actually play to their ceiling, how many teams are actually capable of winning it all?
How many teams can win the national championship? I believe this is a Stanford Steve special, by the way. I would say, I'm looking at the KenPom rankings right now. I'm going to read them off. At maximum capacity, who can win the national championship? Auburn, yes. Duke, yes. Houston, yes. Florida, yes. Tennessee, yes. I know what I'm saying with Rick Barnes. Alabama, yes. That's 6 in a row. Texas Tech, no. Iowa State, yes. That's 7. Wisconsin,
No.
Is Bo
No,
Ryan still
Wisconsin's
coaching?
a no.
A little weird.
Greg Gart's in what, year 9?
Yeah.
Wisconsin's good, folks. Wisconsin to no. Purdue's a no. Gonzaga is a yes at maximum capacity with its offense. It's not going to do it. Again, we're saying you are maxing out. Gonzaga is a yes. Arizona is a yes. A&M is a no. Maryland's a no. Missouri's a no. Kansas a no. Michigan State is a yes.
Really?
St. John's is a yes.
No.
Kentucky is a yes. It's got to be fully healthy. No, Kentucky's a no. Defense isn't good enough. They haven't been healthy. Illinois is a no. Sorry, Fornelli. And then from there, I'd say everyone else below that, you're looking at like Michigan. Michigan's a no.
Yeah,
How many
Michigan's
are
a no.
That's a big list, though.
Yeah, it's a big list. We're looking at what, like 12 or so teams that can win the national title?
I think
So
too.
Is the talent more spread out in the sport now? Like from
Absolutely.
Okay, so more teams have a real reason to believe.
Yeah. More teams, talent's more spread out, and this hasn't really been talked about too much or written about too much. But the top of the sport is very, very good. Like college basketball is having a very good season. These are really good teams. Just from, if you look at the data from an efficiency margin standpoint, like Auburn and Duke are the top 2 teams in the country right now. They are rating as among 2 of the 6 to 8 best teams that we've seen in college basketball over the past decade plus there. So, and it's more than just those 2 specifically, but yeah, talent's a bit more spread out. And as a result, and we've got the final year of the COVID bonus year right now. So you just have sports truly never been older than now and never had more talent spread out. And so in many ways, the game is extremely healthy on levels that we've never seen before.
Among the teams that you did not read off, like the teams that are not true natty contenders, who are our must-watch teams in the tournament? Like for whatever reason, they just play a fun style, or they got a player you got to watch.
All right. How about this? Most compelling teams. It can be because they're fun to watch. It'd be because you can't keep your eyes off them for one reason or another. I will go. I'm going to scroll from the bottom up here now and see who would apply. Memphis, very compelling, very watchable. A bit.
That's Penny, right?
Yep.
Just lost.
Penny Hardaway, look at you. That's right. You'll be breaking down Tyrese Hunter next thing we know it. Memphis is there. I would say New Mexico, extremely watchable. 22-4, one of the best teams outside of Power Conference. That is coached by Rick Pitino's son, Richard Pitino. He will be a candidate. I will predict right here on the Cover 3 podcast, Richard Pitino will be coaching in a high major conference next year.
Indiana?
Play the same style.
No, I think Richard Pitino, you're more looking at like Miami, Florida State.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
Virginia, like maybe in the ACC, maybe somewhere else as well. But I would think that's more likely to happen.
If Virginia hires Richard Pitino, my oh my, what whiplash!
I know, I mean, incredible. Not saying that that's likely to happen.
What happened? Virginia won the Natty. What happened to their coach?
Oh, he got tired of it all.
He quit.
He retired in October. Yeah,
right, so
he said, "I'm out."
Ryan.
He went Dabo. He said, "If they're going to start paying these players, I'm out."
Except he actually followed through with it.
He actually did it. Yeah, he did it. Okay, UConn for the Hurley factor. No doubt about it. Very watchable. Boom. Up here. I want to give you some. Michigan's a ton of fun to watch. They also, all their games are close. Michigan right now has won 6 games by 4 or fewer points. It's the ties all-time record. There's never been a team that's won more than 6 in a row by 4 or fewer. Michigan's done it. Very, very watchable.
I'll tell you what, I swear. Go ahead.
I was going to say to answer your question, but I wish it was still Juwan Howard.
Yeah, no, they got a good coach.
So,
like,
Danny Wolf.
No,
what's doing here?
Dusty May. Danny Wolf on the season, 63% free throw shooter, and this is like total gambler brain. When I'm betting against Michigan, I swear he's 82%. I mean, like they go to him in all of those late game scenarios of these close games, and he is like getting to the rim. He is getting buckets. He is making free throws. It is Danny Wolf's a factor right now.
Major factor. Michigan's a lot of fun. Kentucky is a blast. Kentucky has more top 15 wins than any team in the country. Problem is they're hurt. They don't have their top 3 point guards, and their defense is problematic. So They could get hot and get to the Elite Eight with the right matchups, or man, if they don't shoot well and they get the wrong mid-major, like it is one and done. Side note, Mark Pope, who's done a good job in year one, he has never won an NCAA tournament game. Kentucky is very, very watchable. St. John's is, you can't stop watching them because on defense, they're an absolute menace. Really, really enjoyable there. So those are the teams that I gave you that can't win a national championship that are among the most watchable.
Hey, James Naismith's no longer coaching at Kansas, bud.
Correct. You know what I love is we've got some cross posters here. We got some folks in this live chat that populate the Ion College basketball chat as well, which I love to see. You got some feisty viewers as well. I do very much appreciate this stuff. What else you got?
I do know Coach K does not coach at Duke. We're just reading the chat here. Yes, I know Carolina has a new coach. It's not Roy Williams anymore. I don't know the guy's name.
For how long?
He won't be there much longer.
You honestly can't. I tell you, you've got 2 months of your salary riding on it. You can't tell me Duke's coach right now.
It's the white guy.
Yep.
He pushed a
Well,
kid.
it's
The other
Duke,
night. I
yes.
did see that. Right.
He pushed a kid?
Didn't he push a guy off Cooper Flag?
I think you're thinking of when Kyle Filipowski was almost killed in the court storm last year at Wake Forest. Maybe that's what you're thinking.
Well, I saw that on Instagram.
Okay.
Okay. What does it start with?
John, what's
He
his
played at Duke before?
He played at
Yep.
Duke. He was an
Shire.
All-American and won a title.
Yeah.
Good job.
Chicago kid.
Okay, yeah.
Suburban Chicago.
Duke
I was
and white guy. Got it. We're locked in.
I said Terry in the chat goes Duke and a white guy, not a deep pull.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
That's there we go.
Anything else?
This
No, the chat says there was an angle of Shire pushing a Clemson kid.
I missed it if that happened. Okay. I don't know what that was. They lost at
If Danny Hurley
lost
does it, you
on-
talk about it for months.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair. Hey, before I get out of here, because I want you guys to go back to your show. Let's. Well, first of all, Bud, any other questions about hoops? Anything you want to ask, I'll answer.
Who should I root for? Like, who should I bandwagon for the tournament?
Well, what are your motivations and your desires for rooting? Like the team most likely to win it, or the team that's going to be the most interesting? Like, what's?
I'd like to get at least like 2 good weekends out of my fandom, and also like have games that are watchable.
I think you're
So, like not Texas A&M.
Yeah, no. I think you're. And let's knock Auburn to the side because it's going to be the number 1 overall seed. I honestly think the team that applies in that scenario
Bama.
is Bama.
Bama.
It's Bama.
Yeah. And Bud went to grad school at Bama, so that like
He
now
did.
you've got the additional the additional rooting interest
It's
there.
Bama.
Right
Yeah,
Well done.
Bama's your pick. I got to chime in. First of all, lay out for me real quick on this expanded playoff alleged. What's the alleged reported pitch to change the thing that they just changed?
It is going
That's
to.
wonderful.
I'm gonna go quasi Bud here. I know it's out there, but I've been snowed over by a ton of college hoop stuff, so I have not caught up on the news cycle. I haven't read the story. Give me the elevator pitch, and then let's talk about it real quick before I bounce out.
All right, every single conference gets their own little cute tickets, and they all get to hand them out. And the selection committee is useless, and no teams are ever going to be judged against each other because the SEC gets 4, the Big 10 gets 4, the ACC gets 2, the Big 12 gets 2. 1 for the highest rated group of 5 champion, and then 1
Notre
for
Dame if it's in the top 14.
and Notre Dame if it's in the top 14.
And if it's not Notre Dame, what happens?
Like
Then
another
they're not
at-large.
It's an at-large.
Another
Hold on.
SEC
All
or
right.
Big
So
Ten
now I'm
team.
going to say this back because it sounds just effing stupid.
Yes,
The SEC and the Big 10 get 4 bids automatically.
correct.
The ACC and the
total.
Big 12 will take half as much, and they get 2 apiece.
Correct.
The group of 5 will remain included with 1 bid and 1 bid only. And then in years where Notre Dame is good enough, which will be more years than not, it will get the 14th bid. And if it's not Notre Dame, the committee will actually have to go through the exhaustive process of picking 1 team out of the at-large pool.
Mhm.
Yes.
And this will be a 14-team bracket.
Uh-huh.
Right. 2
And
buys.
it would start not next season, but the season after.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
And they will still force us to get together on Tuesday night to watch the ranking show that literally has
Sorry on that.
absolutely no meaning now.
It just
In related news, softball is now playing triple headers on Tuesday night. So
Bud can't make
I'll be
it.
like extra unavailable.
Now would the conferences themselves be responsible for selecting the 4 teams that get into the field?
I believe so. I think it'll just be based on the standings. There's also talk that maybe instead of having conference championship games like the Big Ten and the SEC in these leagues could stage like little 4-team tournaments between the 3, 4, 5, and 6 seeds. Whereas the top two would automatically get in, and then the
top two get in, and then the winners of those would get into the tournament.
Yeah, like SEC wild card weekend.
Yes,
right.
I don't hate that on its surface. I do hate the idea that you are giving conferences as many as 4 automatic tickets into the field. This is ridiculous.
Yep.
There is a power struggle happening at the highest levels of college athletics that I know you guys are familiar with and you've talked about plenty, but it is stripping away at the threads of what made people love college football and college basketball to begin with. And these things actually intersect in this way. Right now, we're not sure about the expansion of the tournament. It's 68 teams. It will either remain at 68, it will go to 72, or it will go to 76. I've talked with sources consistently over the past 2 years on this. And, there was some more recent reporting over the weekend on whether it could, should, might, won't, whatever. But how these things connect is you've got Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti, the two conference commissioners of the 2 most powerful leagues, and they have, and not just those 2, but those 2, they represent the 2 biggest houses. They have and are in the process of being able to mold this the way that they see fit. And because it's happening on that side with football, there was a lot of concern on the basketball side that although it's not going to massively expand, the tournament doesn't need to expand, period. There is resistance against this idea because, frankly, you don't need any more teams in the tournament. Going in football from 4 to 12, I know Fornelli wasn't a fan of it. I actually understand. Like, if you do it to scale, there actually is a case to be made for it. And 12 is like the max of what it should be. 14 is absolute idiocy and overthinking the process and trying to fix something again that didn't need to be fixed to begin with. And there's concern that you're just going to do this with basketball and take this mentality and say, we want more access for the best teams. Sankey may well use the fact that the SEC might get 12 teams in and the 13th team doesn't get in and say, you're going to tell me that the 13th team didn't deserve to get in this year, the most competitive year, the best year ever in SEC hoops. It's a problem. I do have some faith and trust in some folks at the NCAA level and other conferences to be able to have level-headedness win out when it comes to this stuff. They're separate issues. The reasons that the college football playoff could expand again and change is different from the reasons that would happen with college basketball. But some of the motivations and obviously the parties connect between the two. And the people on the basketball side are looking at what's happening and how perverted the CFP has gotten and could get even more, and saying, okay, you want to do that in football, go knock yourself out, but we can't allow this to happen and bastardize the most perfect sporting event that exists in American sports.
Amen. Yeah, the perverted.
But 14 is idiotic. 12, I can bear. 12 is fine. They need to have home games for the top 4 seeds and give them that experience as well. And then if you want to do the semis and title game, I got no issue with that. But going to 14, for what sake? For what sake, folks? Like
an extra game.
One extra game, a little bit more money. Let's just extract more and more and more. Like, I assume we're all on the same page here. No one here wants 14. No one here wants 4 bids apiece for the power conferences.
They were going to get them anyway. I think it's really just codifying, like for budgeting and scheduling purposes, that they like, hey, they know they can count on this money if they're top X, right? And I think to go to 14, in order for the SEC and Big Ten to get the rev share split they wanted, so they're combining for 58% of the playoff, they probably had to have some concessions because, I mean, let's be real here. Like the Big 12 should be guaranteed 1, not 2, if anything. Like there's usually
but you can't say that, Bud, because who's to say we don't look up in 3 years and the Big 12 somehow winds up having 3 of the top 10 teams in the country? Like, it's not inconceivable that could happen. Like, you don't want to box.
Yeah, I think football is very different than basketball.
I know it's different. I know it's different in football than basketball. You do not want to box yourself in with confines of certain definitions of what a conference can and can't be. Outside of the SEC is different than the Fun Belt. I get all of that stuff. But to think that the Big 12 absolutely couldn't in a random year, think back to like the 2007 season, all that kind of stuff. Like, they couldn't have 3 of the top 10 teams in the country. I know it's unlikely, but you can't. Something happen.
Yeah,
right?
Texas and Oklahoma are gone. So Big 12 is like
the 2 that are capable of acquiring talent at that level are not there.
Yeah, they got that AAC Big 12 just, gobbled up the AAC, and the AAC just gobbled up CUSA, and CUSA just gobbled up the FCS. And it kind of,
I don't think the Big 12 is a single top 25 job.
It's all wonderful. Love it.
The Big 12 in football doesn't have a single top 25 job. I'd probably buy that. Yeah. I'm definitely overstating it with 9 top 10. I don't like the idea that you are boxing out a league that's a power conference from ever having more than 2 bids in a 14-team field. On a fundamental level, that feels very narrow-minded, short-sighted, and destined to backfire at some point, be it 2, 4, 6 years down the road.
Actually, it's long-term minded, because if you do that, they won't be a power league for very much longer, which is the ultimate goal of both the Big Ten and the SEC.
Yeah. I think that's spot on.
It's so much fun.
Because those two, in case you're not aware of it, the Big Ten and the SEC are making all the decisions for the college football playoff in the future.
It does solve some problems.
That I'm very aware of. Yeah.
I don't think that I love this, but it does solve some problems. Like, I think it makes, if you're going to have to keep the conference championship weekend, which I think contractually and financially they want to find a way to do, then you have to find a way to make it a little bit spicier, which they might be able to do, this time.
Get rid of it. Get rid of championship weekend. Everyone starts.
They won't do it.
Everyone starts in week 0. You can't be having the title game drift into January 21st. I mean, there are certain things that if they really want to fix some of the issues here, and when it comes to visibility, like I was as involved in watching the CFP this year as I have been in any year, and I'm a college football casual. I watch it. I don't watch it intently every Saturday, but I do pick off, and I'm keeping track of all this stuff. I don't think it benefits the sport to have postseason games and your tournament stretch over a month. It's college basketball is 3 weeks, and there is a rhythm and a cadence to it, and there's a reason why the sport owns March. College football is caught between this no man's land of like, sweet, we've got these great games, and now we're waiting 10 days, and we're waiting 10 days, and the NFL playoffs are happening. And I know some of the stuff you can't work around, but to me, a lot of this could be resolved if you get rid of the championship games and conference championships. What the hell are we even doing that for anymore? Don't even play them, and then bump the season back to week 0 so that you can end your season no later than what it used to be, and that's January 9, 10, 11.
No disagreement there.
Yeah, no disagreement there. We want to.
I think that this would be better if you had 7 guaranteed spots for the SEC and Big Ten to split. Like, if you gave 3-3, and then you could create more drama by like making them fight out for that 7th guaranteed spot.
Yeah,
to me that would be interesting.
It's overly.
I don't think the Big Ten needs 4 guaranteed, but like I think in order for the Big Ten to go along with the SEC, the SEC had to make some concessions and give them 4 and 4. Just like you need the Big 12 and you need the SEC to vote for this eventually, so you had to give them 2 guaranteed each.
Yeah,
I mean, I get Jim Phillips is understandably angry. Like, what if Florida State, Clemson, and Miami get their act together all in the same year, which has never actually happened? Then you could have a real argument for having 3. The Big 12, I mean, I think the Big 12 commissioner has to be doing absolute cartwheels that he gets 2 guaranteed. Like, I mean, that's 2 more than they should have. And the G5 guys getting 1 when on average, like, I think they average a team in the top 14 like once every 4 years, I read. Like, getting 1 guaranteed every year is, in a football, which is like, it's not a sport that you win with like coaching and style. It's a collision sport. It's literally like bigger, stronger, faster, pushing people out of the way. Like, the body types are not similar in any way. I think them getting 1 every year, I don't hate this, but it does take away some of the drama. So I do hate that. Like, the 4 guaranteed, I want to see like what the downstream effects of that are.
All right, good deal. I'm gonna let you guys get back to your football show and let your audience enjoy the chemistry.
I'm not trying to dunk on the Big 12, Chad. I just like the Big 12 doesn't have any teams that have that quality of player.
Bud hates the Big 12. He always has. He always will. He doesn't even.
I would watch a 12-team Big 12 tournament, but like, they're much closer to the G5 than they are to the ACC, Big 10, or SEC. Much closer.
Bud watches the Big 12 the same way he watches his son's baseball games. It's cute. It's adorable. He thinks it's fun.
Okay, fair enough. Hey, folks, thanks for indulging me. Little cross post. Chip, folks that really know that Chip hops on the Eye on College Basketball Pod in March. We'll have him back on plenty of shows there. If you're not already subscribed, hey, in all sincerity and earnestness, come find us. We have a great time covering the sport. The pod can get off the rails sometimes with me and Gary Parrish. Next episode will be Tuesday, 1 Eastern on CBS Sports Network. Eye on College Basketball. Appreciate you, gents.
He is Matt Norlander. Our thanks to you. And yes, go listen to the Eye on College Basketball podcast. And coming up on the other side, more on that proposal, the reporting from Yahoo Sports' Ross Dellinger over the weekend, giving us a lens into all the moving and shaking about the future of the college football playoff and more next.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Carousel! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
That's got to be the longest we've ever gone before our first break.
Has Norlander thought about selling like college basketball T-shirts? Or workshop that'll be like, it feels like the sport is really back, with this good year. So
we just did do 40 minutes on it.
I'm saying, yeah.
Look, I do think college basketball is having an awesome season.
It is.
I'm looking forward to starting it.
I have very much enjoyed it.
They play tonight.
You know what? You know what? This will send me on a mini rant. Actually, now they used to play on Monday nights. They don't anymore. There's like 2 decent games tonight. Like they have the new TV deals with like ESPN taking total control of the SEC, ACC, and most of the Big 12, I think. Monday and Thursday nights used to be fun nights in college basketball. They're completely barren now.
I mean, we have Arizona Baylor tonight.
At 10 o'clock.
At 10 o'clock.
That's pretty late.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it used to be called Big Monday. It used to be like actual big matchups.
Yeah, there'd be a game at 7 o'clock and a game at 9 o'clock, and they were both bangers.
Yeah, now it's.
I don't understand.
At least
I know that MEAC Mondays are still alive and well, baby.
It's because like the SEC only plays like 3 days a week now.
Right.
Whereas the Big Ten plays 6 nights a week. So at least you're getting games every day except for Monday.
Yeah, if you want to watch Duke at Virginia, you can see the lifeless corpse of a Virginia basketball team that Tony Bennett abandoned in October. And maybe, who knows, apparently
he left his heart in Charlottesville.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
But I do agree that Arizona Baylor game is fun. It's just I can't stay up at 10 till midnight, 12:30 on a Monday night.
Watching Caleb Love jack jumpers.
Yeah, come on now. So let's sort of bring some context back to this, because the Big Ten and the SEC athletic directors are going to be meeting this week on Wednesday to basically discuss how they're going to guide this, because when the new, and again, this is not about the 2025 season. This is about the new college football playoff contract, which runs from the 2026 season through the 2031 season. The SEC and the Big Ten have decision-making power. Now, there's some flowery language in there where they are saying, oh, yeah, of course, we are going to have robust internal discussions with the other, 10, 11, all of the commissioners, all of the presidents, everybody who makes up all these different committees. But the SEC and the Big Ten, by the contract, have the power to be able to set things in motion. So that's why the meetings this week, in addition to some college football playoff management committee meetings scheduled for February the 25th, that's what has everybody looking at this. Now, the ACC met last week. The Big 12 is meeting this week. Everybody is getting their ducks in a row for what will be the negotiations. Now, as we've discussed earlier, 14-team models, 16-team models, both seem likely. The idea of automatic qualifiers do seem like they are likely going to be at the top of the competition, at the top of the conversation. But there's some other pieces to this. Like you mentioned earlier, the changes to conference championship weekend, the fact that this could finally get the SEC to move to a 9-game schedule is another piece of this that is going to be interesting, as well as a scheduling arrangement between the Big Ten and the SEC. So as we start to look at all the different angles to this, Tom, I know you either have just turned in or are working on a piece for CBSSports.com. Where do you feel the strongest about how we're plowing ahead with the college football playoff?
I mean, it's coming ever since the Big Ten and the SEC were able to wrangle control of the playoff away. We knew that this was going to be the ultimate endpoint. So I'm not going to harp on the same crap I'm always harping on about this. Like, I'm never going to like it. But there are aspects to this that I genuinely appreciate. Like, there was last week a quote, and this is from Dellinger's story, a quote from Jim Phillips, the ACC commissioner, saying, there needs to be fairness and access to the championship. It needs to be a true championship, not artificial and not an invitational. Jim, I have news for you. The format we've been playing for the last whatever years has been an invitational. It has never.
Isn't that a shot at the 4-team relic, like the last year of the 4-team when FSU didn't get in?
Yes, but it's also a relic of the 12-teamer because it's an invitational. It's
sure.
When 2/3 of the field is an at-large and it's based on rankings, It's not really you're not playing your way in for directly, literally. What I appreciate about the new format is at least everybody knows the guidelines now. Like the word playoff is actually more accurate of a description of what it is, because even if it's an unbalanced thing where the Big Ten and the SEC get 4 autos and the Big 12 and the ACC only get 2, going into the year, everybody knows what you have to do. And I think that is what a playoff is, because if you look at playoffs in the professional sports, they're not choosing one team out of a field of 4 for a final playoff wildcard spot. The team has to earn the spot based on the rules, based on how things are set up. So from that aspect, I'm okay with it. Never going to be happy with it, but I prefer it other than to a committee of people choosing teams. I always will. The other part of this that I actually enjoy and actually kind of made me happy, it's like, it's not how I wanted to get there, but I'll gladly take it. 9 conference games in the SEC. I have long been a proponent of more conference games, because I think now, especially as these leagues grow, we, as Norlander touched on, we're losing the fabric of what brought a lot of people to college athletics. And the more that these leagues grow and the less often you see the teams that you're used to playing, you kind of lose touch with it. So I think if you expand conference schedules, like Illinois, for me, part of the thing when expansion this year was we no longer play Iowa every year. We no longer play Wisconsin every year. Like 2 states that literally border us that we have been playing forever. We're going to see them every other year for the most part now. And that sucks to me. Now, if you add, like when you add conference games, you can decrease that, especially in the SEC where you've now grown to 16. So you're not as bloated as the Big Ten at 18. But still, if you're playing 9 games, more of your traditional rivals you will see, while you will sprinkle in some of the new guys. And then those rivalries will develop over time. But I also love the idea of the quote unquote Big Ten SEC challenge, in which the 2 leagues will then schedule a non-conference game against each other. And I guess maybe they'll do it like based on where you finished the previous season, like 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2, to generate or at least increase the odds of getting great TV matchups, which is what it's all about, because they're trying to increase television revenue. Because now in the era of revenue sharing, when you're going to have to be splitting all this money with the players, well, shit, we got to keep some of our piles, so we have to expand that pile. And this is a good way for fans just during the regular season. It's creating more excellent regular season matchups to watch every single Saturday for fans. And that's ultimately what everybody wants. I think that maybe you can try to come up with a model where if you're doing a 12-game regular season, everybody plays 9 conference games. There's 4 power leagues. Now, this will go against part of, giving the G5 one spot, and they will fight as like hell against it. But I think that eventually you're just screaming at the tide to go back out. What if the SEC schedules 1 non-conference against the Big Ten, 1 against the ACC, 1 against the Big 12? All 4 of the power leagues schedule 1 non-conference game against each other. So that's 3 non-conference games, and everybody plays 9 conference games. There's your 12-game season.
It's an NFL.
Yeah. Now, I get it. The size of the leagues, you can't do it for everybody because the leagues are all different sizes. But I think you should try to work your way towards that model. And then, like, Notre Dame could be considered an ACC opponent.
Now, coaches do like playing that G5.
They do. But now that the playoff is different, where it's going to be your top 4 teams get in, you can afford to lose a non-conference game. It doesn't really hurt you that much.
But it's also for like it's nice to have a game where your backups are going to be in.
So play a G5 team for your spring game, except it's no longer played in the spring. It's played in early August.
I don't know if they would do that, but I think, look, Tom's point about TV is really good. You also need good home matchups.
Mm-hmm.
TVs are getting bigger and cheaper and nicer, and the home experience is better. Like, you have to have experiences in the stadium that you really can't replicate at home. And one of those experiences, I think, is like the true energy of a big game, like somebody you're actually excited to go see, like, 'cause it has real juice to it. I think the Big Ten SEC would give you that. Big Ten, the ACC would maybe like the top third of the ACC would get fans excited. I don't think many people care about seeing the bottom half of the ACC. In terms of like the casual fans, how do you get your stadium to go from 75 to 100, right? I don't think much of the Big 12 moves the needle at all for SEC fans, maybe a little bit for Big Ten fans. And so I think if you had all four of those play each other, I think you'd have a good number of the teams in the SEC and the Big Ten be kind of disappointed. Like, not really like cool. Tech's coming to town. They ain't doing it for me if I'm a Tennessee fan.
I'll tell you what, I am really happy with the way that some of these universities have responded to create these matchups on campus already, sort of without the force. I mean, I know this is a little bit of a side conversation from where we're at, but like I just assumed Clemson LSU was going to be in Atlanta. It's not. It's going to be in Death Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And like we know that Texas and Ohio State is going to be in the shoe. There are just, and we had the Texas Michigan game this past year. I mean, Alabama is going to be at Florida State. I mean, that is a kickoff ass game if I've ever seen one. I mean, that thing is like supposed to be in a neutral site, NFL thing, but it's not. It's going to be in Tallahassee, and those kinds of environments are cool. So I do agree that if one thing that comes out of this means better on-campus non-conference games, that's a great thing to be able to come out of any sort of step forward into college football's future.
Do we know, going back to like the non-conference idea, the top with the SEC and the Big Ten, the top 4 teams get in? Will that be based on conference standings or rankings?
That's what Norlander asked. It's a really interesting question because if we harken back to the Big 12 when they had the whole Oklahoma, Texas Tech thing, and then also again the Big 12 when they had Baylor TCU in 2014.
14.
Yeah, like leading up to the conference is certainly interesting. I think you probably should leave it up to the conference because you want to take away power of the committee.
Well, what about just this past year? They had 4 teams tied for first place in the Big 12.
Right.
I mean, they, ended up picking 2 based on their tiebreakers, and they went and they played for the one spot that was available to them in the college football playoff. Would then both of those teams just go? And then if that's the case, why do you even play that game?
That's a good point. I don't hate this at all, by the way. Like, it just doesn't seem. I don't see how this is materially worse than the 12. But I could certainly be missing something.
I don't think it's worse than the 12. I just think it's, like I said, I think I appreciate more that there's actual guidelines for getting in, which is
as
all.
Opposed to just being like the field goal posts are always moving all along the way. Because so I guess that would be my biggest thing that I would want answered. Biggest thing that I would need to figure out would be the idea that if the selection committee is still going to exist, is it their ranking that will determine, these other extra bids for conferences, or are the conferences in charge of it? Are they each going to have their own method of being able to choose it? No, those are all very, that's why they're going to have these meetings. That's why they're going to have all these discussions here in the next coming weeks. But according to Yahoo Sports' Ross Dellinger, the expectation is that there could be final decisions made in the coming weeks.
Have you guys thought about 12-16 or 14-16 much?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I like 14 better.
Why?
Buys.
Yeah, I think it preserves the importance of actually playing for something in your conference. Like getting the bye is a big deal. I know what happened this year in the playoff, but I think the math will prove that out, especially if the talent in the sport continues to kind of spread out more.
Good call. Coming up on the other side, more of our look at the future of the college football playoff. Your questions and more next.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
We got a great audience with us watching live. We appreciate everybody who came to hang out for a robust conversation with Matt Norlander, and we will continue to answer your questions here about the college football playoffs. So let's just have a meeting with everybody watching and us. We want to do assistant coaching carousel on Wednesday.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, I'd rather not try to squeeze it in and
There goes all that research.
It's not a 2-minute show.
Yeah. I didn't want to squeeze out Matt. He brought so much great energy, enthusiasm for the idea and the crossover event that, we can break down just the dynamic expectations that we've got all across the landscape. I mean,
do we want to have a hockey expert come on to break down the Four Nations for the first 40 minutes of the show on Wednesday?
That was low scoring until it wasn't Thursday night.
Right. Listen.
We still think the U.S. takes it or Canada?
I don't know. I mean, yes, USA. What I want to see. Well, never mind. We're gonna get. Let's.
Listen, we would need a solid 9 minutes just to talk about our expectations for Brian Harsin and the Cal Bears. I mean, we would need way too much time to talk about Mike Shula and what's coming for the Gamecocks offense in 2025. So yeah, we'll be getting into the assistant coaching carousel. I just think that the United States has some mutants out there, some big dudes. Big dudes. I mean, as a Carolina Hurricanes fan, I've really spent a lot of time with distaste for the Kachucks, but they're out there throwing knucks, man. It makes for a fun viewing experience. You take this over the Hockey All-Star game?
Yes.
Yeah.
I took it over the NBA All-Star game too.
Yeah. I didn't watch any of that.
Nope.
Okay, so Ian, when we were having our discussion, said, when will the group of five finally break away and create their own playoff like they should?
When they're left with no other choice.
This is close to, having all of those teams fighting for one spot, and if especially they expand it to 16 and they can't get another team in there and it just ends up being one, then I would guess that by the time this contract runs out in 2031, that the future would maybe be the group of five having their own playoff. Heck, the future might be the group of five and some power conference teams who are currently in power conferences having their own playoff.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my expectation.
6-7 years is a long time. A lot can change.
Well, this is what was it? Was it Trev Alberts who came out and a couple years ago said, the next round of conference realignment will be the really big one, not just schools switching conferences, but like a total shakeup to the landscape. 2031, the end of the college football playoff contract. You're starting to come to the end of the Big Ten, starting to come to the end of the SEC. I mean, if you want to talk about any Super League stuff, I feel like we're starting to get our answer for when that might happen down the line. But for now, I think the group of five is going to play in the current system, and I think that they will continue to battle for that one spot. It's my expectation.
The group of five playoff would totally suck, by the way, if you don't move the transfer portal.
Yes.
Oh,
I think you would have a tremendous amount of
very, very good point.
That doesn't get mentioned a lot.
It would have been funnier if you just stopped after would suck, by the way.
Yeah. Damn, why'd you have to make such a good point? Yeah, because, for those who weren't able to just connect those dots, where do you think what happens to the best players of the group of five?
Chris Hummer had a great article about how many guys leave from that.
How many guys leave what?
How many guys from those all conference teams of the group of five are returning? It's very little.
Not many.
That all conference teams in the Sun Belt, where else do you think that you're getting plucked from the most? Sun Belt comes to mind, but
Sun Belt for sure. The AAC gets some of the Mountain West. They all do.
It's a shopping list.
Yeah.
Unless
you're a senior and you're out of eligibility, if you're on a first team, all Sun Belt or all Mountain West or all whatever, there's a very good chance you will not be there next year.
Yeah, that's a great call. I want to say that the Sun Belt all conference team was part of Hummer's article where he was able to just go through and it's out eligibility, gone, P5, P5.
I think P5. Isaac says in the chat there's 2 players on it that will be back in the Sun Belt next year.
Yeah. That's tough right there. Big when you mention that G5 playoff, just remember who might be out there. Michael jumped in. He said Big 12 and ACC should be thankful they get 2 guaranteed spots. I'm surprised it's not 1 each.
I am too, to be honest. But like, you need people to vote for you. I don't think SC and the Big Ten really want to break away and do their own thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of like liability uncertainty in the sport. It helps if everybody has to pay every time you get sued and kick in a little bit, like that adds up. So you have to give them a little bit of carrot. It can't be all stick.
After they rate them one more time.
Yeah.
One last. This one, can we get a prediction from each of you on who is the Indiana or Arizona State that nobody saw coming?
So for next season?
Yeah, for next season.
I mean, Illinois just won 10 games, so I don't think they count.
You might be. Illinois came to mind for me.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a ton of returning experience, and they have an Indiana-esque, not the same, not as easy as Indiana, but
favorable.
Yeah, it's favorable. So they could make that run. I'm thinking a team that maybe just. I'm going to look at teams that weren't, winning 10 games though.
I'm looking for. Okay, so
Baylor.
Do we think? Yeah, Baylor for sure could be one. Maybe
USC.
I don't have that confidence, Tom. I do not share your confidence. It took me a while to circle back to the Rob Ryan press conferences, though. But I mean, that was pretty amazing. I might sign up for their YouTube channel just to be able to get all of his post practice availability.
Would we count Florida? Like if Lagway hits?
I think that clearly has to be in the conversation. Yeah.
Okay.
What about Kansas?
I have a weird thing. It's like when I look at the Big 12, everybody's the same to me.
Anybody could be the next Arizona State.
Mm-hmm.
North Carolina with that schedule?
I don't think so.
Okay. What about the school from which Carolina plucked their DC, Washington? If Williams hits at quarterback, like they could be really good. The problem is the schedule is
their schedule
brutal.
I mean, they get Ohio State at Michigan, Illinois at Wisconsin, Oregon, and then what are their easy ones? Like they host Rutgers, they get
Purdue at home.
That helps. Like even going to Maryland, they go to Maryland early, which typically Maryland's better early than late. I mean, that's a hard schedule for sure.
What about Utah?
If they go 9-3. I think Utah should be the betting favorite for the Big 12. But
I know I've sensed that. I've smelled that on you. I like it. I like just carving out that corner because they're 7th on the odds board. Yeah. You have to go like pretty far down. I mean, we've discussed the Big 12 a lot in the last.
No more Adam Driver speculation. New OC and Tim Beck. I just feel like.
And Devin Dampier is awesome.
Yeah, Devin Dampier is very, very fun. I think that Utah is being slept on quite a bit.
Who was the team that they were beating the crap out of in the game in which Rising got hurt?
Baylor.
Which ended up being a pretty decent team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Baylor's a DB falling down from beating Colorado, right?
We will continue. By the way, great question, and we'll continue to answer your questions on Thursday's show. Always getting interactive with the big old bag of mail and chatting it up with the tailgate. We will be back Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time for your full assistant coaching carousel breakdown. We got my guy Colin. He ran it. Sorry, I didn't mean to dox you here, Mr. Tournament Bracket. So saw me at Chino Taco. Shout out. Always good to run into listeners at my favorite taco spot down at McNeil Point. All right.
Chip's never going back there again.
Listen, my people at Cheeto know that I can't quit. I took off, no joke, Tom. I took off 2-3 weeks and I came back and they were like, "Where have you been?" I was like, "Oh gosh, okay, I come here too often." All right. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fornelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip _Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.